Well, a few months ago, I went to a live streaming of a presentation on Michelangelo's life, which went through some art cinemas around the country. And it was absolutely wonderful. But I realized that there were really only six people in that cinema. And you could say, well, tough luck for moving into the back of beyond. But even so, I thought it was interesting to see how few people were interested in such a master's life. So that set me thinking about, the value of beauty and art in today's society, which of course changes with generations. So that was really the seed that started me going on this journey. And also, as a perpetual astrology student, I noticed Venus is maybe considered a bit of a lightweight influence amongst the planets by some astrologers. After all, what weight do seemingly superficial pursuits of love and beauty hold against the more weighty subjects the other planets stand for, like commitment, faith, justice, and war, to name but a few? Nothing could be further from the truth, in my humble opinion, as I hope you will agree after today's exploration. I was struck by this beautiful Burne-Jones painting, The Mirror of Venus, as a poignant symbol of how the Venus principle both operates and is misunderstood, since time immemorial, it seems. Does this masterpiece carry no specific theme other than a hypothetical gathering of Venus and her handmaidens before a pool of water? It is so beautiful you could just drown in the images and call it a day. Venus is the only one standing, clad in morning sky blue, but looking curiously forlorn or defeated. She takes no glory in her court and almost seems to lament their fate as she looks down on them looking down on themselves. The girls, too, stare somewhat curiously into the pond, seeking an answer which seems to elude them. Only one girl looks up to Venus as if to say, "What is the meaning of this, mighty goddess?" And Venus, having done and seen it all, doesn't even try to respond. Does she think you'll find out soon enough? In a contemporary sense, the cult of an image-driven society through a very busy social media, for example, reflects this painting quite aptly too. Naturally, the legend of Narcissus is evoked by the image, with young, beautiful women staring back at their own reflections. Is Burne-Jones suggesting that to be young is to be intoxicated by the narcotic of youth, and that all things will come to you in time? Or is the painting a more general allegory on the nature of beauty itself, that it's little more than a pool of water, which when disturbed by the slightest breeze, all but washes away? The fact that the painting is in itself so beautiful is part of the message. We are so dazzled by the surface of things that we forget to look beyond, ahead, or within. So, with a wink and a touch of humour to Burne-Jones's painting, I thought realistically this is more what we look like. Here are some of the questions we will be exploring, to which you might hopefully get some answers after today's sessions. Your relationship to love, to others, and to yourself. Who do you see in the mirror? What do you value, hold dear, or find pleasurable? How do you allow those values to manifest in your life and your creativity's journey? So, on to mythology and archetype. We'll only briefly visit this huge subject, as Caroline no doubt will regale us next month with an in-depth exploration. It is, however, central to the astrological and symbolic meaning and understanding of the planet Venus, and I wanted to briefly explore the associations of myth and archetype to them. Of course, I had to start with Botticelli's Birth of Venus, which at first glance celebrates beauty, love, and purity. But let's not forget the savage myth behind her birth. The god Uranus, god of progress, wanting to overthrow the god of time, cut off his father's Kronos' genitals and threw them into the sea. Let's be grateful Botticelli didn't include that detail in his divine painting, thus creating Venus, who was carried up from the sea on the foam of waves. There are so many symbolisms associated with this painting. Following Venus's birth myth, it seems the one without one of them would be out with the old, in with the new. So the symbol of rebirth and renewal, one of the core principles of the divine feminine, seems to be at the heart of this painting. Of course, there are other reasons for the symbol of feminine purity represented by Botticelli's painting, driven by ideals of beauty at the time and the creation of a new world order by the powerful Medici family in Florence. Renaissance philosophers like Ficino saw the Venus painting as the symbol of both earthly and celestial love, suggesting a deeper spiritual meaning that could align with Christian ideas of divine beauty and the soul. Some scholars suggest Botticelli was not creating a pagan goddess, but a new Christianized version of Venus, representing inner beauty and spiritual love, with even the gold in the painting symbolizing heaven. All this caused considerable controversy in the church at the time, as the divine feminine was maybe not as much denied as expected to be dressed in a certain chaste attire. But the goddess was not always considered pure and demure. So the ancient goddesses, Venus's predecessors. Inanna is the original Sumerian name for the complex goddess of love, beauty, fertility, but also of war and the cycle of rebirth through the descent into the underworld, the necessary confrontation with the unknown. Ishtar is the later Babylonian Assyrian name for the same deity. Inanna was closely associated with the planet Venus, which was known as the Star of Inanna or Ishtar later, named Ninciana, Divine Queen, Illumination of Heaven. The eight-pointed morning star, which you see here, symbolized divine protection through the 8 cardinal directions and often appeared above her artwork or alongside her iconography. The star has also been interpreted as a wild rose, with its thorns representing the contradictory nature, embodying both beauty and danger, and the lion underfoot symbolizes her dominance, power, and fierce assertive nature. Hathor of Egypt, goddess of love, fertility, motherhood, and again the goddess who not only accompanies the dead to the underworld, but also braves it to return with the riches hidden beneath the surface. Interestingly, she gets her shadow counterpart, goddess Sekhmet, a vengeful warmongering and destructive force who separates from Hathor to do her dark deeds, then returns and merges once more into the life-giving Hathor. So much so for the lightweight tiptoeing about, admiring one's reflection. But let us not move on just with the demure, relatively more contemporary Western image of Venus or Aphrodite in Greek mythology, and remind ourselves of the other sides of her as perfectly depicted by Titian's Venus and Adonis. Here is a Venus who quite undignifiedly will pursue the object of her desires, and although this is a story of her love for Adonis ending tragically, it has also come to stand for a symbol of lust and licentiousness, a selfish wrecker of the proper institutions of marriage and decent society. And of course, this is the shadow side of the goddess of love. So some of these interpretations could make us think of our own censors to Venus's expression, the collective influence of Judeo-Christian concepts of sacrifice and purity may not sit well with the apparent selfish pursuit of love, beauty, and pleasure. And how about this Aphrodite, perfectly self-sufficient, surrounded by her wild animals, looking on rapturously at her self-abandoned dance? So here we are, with all the different facets and bits of puzzle around the archetype of Venus. On the one hand, we have the beautiful, loving, generous, life-giving principle, and on the other hand, we have Venus the destroyer, the I'll do as I please, and to hell with the consequences principle. What is the driving force for this seesaw of extremes, this light and darkness and everything in between? Really, what these dynamic principles are all pointing to is the concept of eros, central to the creative and procreative urge, and a measure of one's self-value in how much one is able to express it. So eros is a complex and multifaceted concept. One of the meanings of eros is passionate love, from which the term erotic is derived, as opposed to pure or platonic love. Eros has also been used in philosophy and psychology in a much wider sense, almost as an equivalent to life energy. Plato did not consider physical attraction to be a necessary part of eros. According to Plato, eros can be diverted to philosophy rather than dissipated in sexuality for the purpose of using erotic energy as a vehicle for the transformation of consciousness and union with the divine. He described eros as a universal force that moves all things towards peace, perfection, and divinity. Eros himself is a daemon, namely a creature between divinity and mortality. In Freudian psychoanalysis, the life instinct, encompassing drives for survival, pleasure, reproduction, creation, and connection, is in contrast to the opposing force of thanatos, the death instinct. Freud posited that these two fundamental instincts are constantly in conflict, shaping human motivation and personality through unconscious desires, and that eros promotes growth, harmony, and the continuation of life, while thanatos pushes towards the destruction and aggression. I suppose here we see the ancient goddesses at work, constantly moving between light and darkness. For Carl Jung, eros is the life-affirming, connecting, and desiring force that drives towards wholeness and relationship. So not merely sexual love, but a powerful archetypal force encompassing desire, connection, and the dissolution necessary for psychic and spiritual growth. According to Jung, the anima is the inner feminine archetype in a man, as I'm sure you're all aware, which is linked to the eros principle of relatedness, feeling, and love. Integration of the anima allows a man to develop emotional sensitivity, creativity, and a connection to intuition and spirituality, lending depth and imagination to the inner life. No pressure then, Ian, as a token man. So creatively, eros represents the vitality, vibrancy, and desire driving the creative process, generating new ideas, works of art, and the transformation of imagination into applied form. Eros is ultimately the desire for wholeness, initially perhaps in the form of passionate love, yet truly a desire for psychic relatedness, a desire for interconnection and interaction with other sentient beings and the divine. So much so for the lightweight Venusian theories of tabloid astrology. What a powerful archetype force she truly is. Let's see if we can uncover some of these Venusian eros principle in our own charts and lives shortly. So I've kept astronomical information about the planet Venus to a minimum, but I felt the relevant information for today's exploration would be that it is the brightest and hottest planet, pun intended, the only planet spinning clockwise, so she knows something the others don't. This motion is described in some sources as rotating backwards or retrograde rotation, only because a planet spins the other way to the others, which is interesting. The planet is also described as Earth's evil twin, due to its sheer heat able to melt just about anything. Interesting that Mars is not considered evil, even though the planet's environment is as hostile due to different factors. And so the eternal Mars versus Venus debate continues. It is, of course, with Mercury, the morning or evening star, sometimes visible in the dawn or dusk skies. The little diagram below illustrates Venus' trajectory and the reason it appears when it does quite nicely. So Venus is the second planet from the Sun, while Earth is the third. This means that, oh, sorry, let me just go back. I didn't mean to click that. There we are. So Earth is the third. This means Venus's orbit is smaller and inside Earth's orbit. So from Earth's viewpoint, Venus can never appear far from the Sun in the sky. So you see, Venus was always meant to shine. You probably all know this, but provided there is a clear sky tomorrow morning, the early risers amongst you might be able to see Venus shining brightly in the eastern sky, starting from about 2 hours before sunrise, but at its best about 1 hour before it. So, in case you thought beauty is random, let's look at the Rose of Venus. I thought this incredible geometric pattern of the Rose of Venus couldn't be overlooked today. The planet associated with beauty and love literally draws a rose in the sky. So it forms a geometric pattern by her apparent path as seen from the Earth 13 times over an 8-year cycle. Due to the orbital resonance between Venus and Earth, the planet appears to draw a 5-petaled rose in the sky, creating a pentagram. The pentagram corresponds to the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, the cosmic pattern of the rose 13 to 8, and its 5 petals are numbers contained within this sequence. These are the same patterns we see in seashells, leaves, pine cones, some animal horns, and galaxies. They show up throughout nature as if the entire universe is using the same blueprint. And Venus moves right along with it. This rose pattern is more than a visual curiosity. It speaks to the rhythm of creation itself. Venus doesn't move in straight lines. She curves, she spirals, she returns to the same point from a different angle. That alone feels like a metaphor for how we create, how we grow, and how we live. Creativity often doesn't happen in a straight line either. There are seasons, layers, returns. Sometimes what looks like slowing down is actually something taking root. This pattern, the 5-petal rose, reminds us to trust that. It's a reminder that we are not meant to bloom all at once, that sometimes the most beautiful things take their time. This is the energy of the divine feminine. It's not just softness or beauty. It's a universal intelligence behind the bloom, the spiral that circles back and brings you somewhere new each time, even if it looks familiar. As in T.S. Eliot's famous poem, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." So, astrology at last. You will recognize this familiar glyph for Venus, the circle of the spirit, here above the cross of conscious reality. This symbolizes matter ascending into spirit, the grounding of conscious reality, and the importance of balancing the spiritual with the material. Even though there is a symbolic interplay between spirit and matter, the glyph does seem to suggest that spirit has a dominance over matter, as it is on top of the cross. The glyph also resembles a handheld mirror, symbolizing the importance of reflecting on ourselves in order to assess our self-value and self-esteem. So never mind our image. We're now going to move into cookbook theory to keep things clear and simple. These are just some tools to help you hopefully reach an enhanced understanding of how you express your Venus. So we'll start with a positive expression. The way you love others and yourself represents your values, including self-worth, qualities valued in loved ones, your personal and social experience of beauty, joy, fun, and pleasure, your creative and artistic gifts and how you express them, your relationship to finances and material comfort, the types of people you are naturally drawn to. And if we just look at the more difficult expressions, possessiveness and jealousy, controlling behavior, self-worth based on superficial values, external reasons for loving, relying on others for validation and happiness, loss of personal identity, negative self-image, suppression of creativity, artistic blocks, self-doubt, consumerism, overspending, financial insecurity, narcissistic tendencies, social isolation. So you can take a picture of this slide if you'd like, just a reminder of what you're actually looking for later on. It's a part of the piece of the puzzle. So these are just there to help you. Are there any questions? Just unmute yourself or put something in the chat box if you have a question. Okay, so I shall move on to the next slide. So here is a chart of our meeting today, exactly for the time of 4 o'clock. I have based it in Leicestershire, even though we're scattered everywhere. Our spiritual home is Rogbank. I'll just take you through, for those who are not familiar with astrology, the very basics. So, of course, here we have the wheel, 360 degrees, divided into 12 segments, which are known as the houses, and they represent the spheres of life. On the outside of the wheel, we have all the zodiac signs and the different elements. On the inside of the wheel, we have the planets, and here we have Venus, the star of today's show. The lines, the busy lines in the middle are aspects, known as aspects. The red lines are the more challenging aspects, and the blue lines are aspects which can encourage a planet's expression. I shall speak a little bit more about that. So if you have a red line, quite a lot of red lines that go towards your Venus, this can be a challenge. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It just helps you to develop some skills and to how to unearth it and bring it to life. So it's just not as natural an expression as just a blue line. So we shall go into all the details later, but I thought I'd use this as a little pointer to basics. Any questions? Okay. And also, before we moved on, we move on, could I just check that you've all identified your Venus by sign, element, and house? Please let me know if you're having trouble. A chart can all look like a jumble if you don't know what you're looking for.
I can't do it because I've just had to move bases because of the internet being very shabby today.
I
So I
see.
daren't switch you off and then look at
Okay.
the chart.
I
Sorry.
see. No, don't worry. Jennifer, if you just take pictures of all the relevant astrology slides, and then you can do your own detective work a bit later. You can still do the imaging.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Just been a bit flustered with the
Oh,
connection.
it is flustering technology. Don't worry about it.
Try.
Right.
Okay, here you go. Got you.
Okay. Am I okay to move on? Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So here we are. So Venus through the signs. So although these may read like a tabloid column, they are still quite good indicators of how you might express your eros. I won't read these all out to you, but if you'd like to make a note of the sign Venus finds itself in your chart and either take a picture of the relevant sign or take some notes. As an illustration, I have a little story for you called Venus at Champneys. This is loosely based on the Zodiac bus stop by Claire Martin, some of you might remember from one of my workshops at Rock Bank. I have adapted it to fit the Venusian beauty theme, rather literally in this case, of self-worth through self-care at a luxury health spa. So, there is a queue at the welcome desk of Champneys. A group of 12 has just arrived, some looking forward to this day more than others. Aries shoots past the queue, no time for this, straight to the plan of the day board, notices a high impact class is about to begin, and runs into the changing rooms to quickly get dressed in a bright workout outfit. They make it to the class just on time and put themselves fairly at the front, even though they've arrived last. Taurus is patiently waiting in the queue, taking in the luxurious surroundings, the beautiful flower arrangements everywhere, and the wonderful smells wafting around. They're planning to maximize all that is on offer today. The treatments, saunas and steam rooms, a gentle swim in the pool. They've heard the lunches here are divine and prepared by a master chef to top it all. They're already planning their postprandial nap in a comfortable place, probably one of the resting beds with a warm blanket over them. Gemini is tapping their foot, wondering what the whole hold-up is about, wondering where the places are within the spa where phones and tablets are allowed. Their messaging friends have already put up a selfie on social media, guess where I am, and looking around to see if they can get any inspiration for their article about the spa to be published in a few days. Ooh, look at that person over there. They look like quite good fun. Do I know them? Cancer is feeling a little depressed at not knowing most of the people in the queue. Their best friend cancelled last minute and they feel quite let down by that. They're always there for others, but when they need the support. Maybe they could return with their mum and or partner to make a memorable day of it. And what about that sofa there in the corner? Wouldn't that look nice at home in a snug? Nice art on the walls. I might try and copy that later. Leo is looking around for the manager to sort this unacceptable queue. They really should not be kept waiting and expect to be treated with the acknowledgement they deserve. Finally, a place matching their standards, but falling short of expectations so far. They settle when someone compliments them on their outfit and look forward to stealing the show by the swimming pool later. Virgo is feeling a little anxious at the delay and the thought of possibly missing the first yoga breath class of the day, which they found out about in advance to organise the spa day most efficiently. Virgo checks their bag, making sure they haven't forgotten anything, the right outfit for the right activity, and tries not to worry as they're really here to relax. Hopefully, the lunches are somewhat healthy. A master chef sounding a bit out of place and excessive in a place promoting health and well-being. Wouldn't want the diet to fly out the window today. Libra is trying to reassure and calm Virgo down with the promise of a harmonious day surrounded by calm music and people coexisting in a relaxed atmosphere. What a nice change from the real world and all the rushing about. The staff look ever so lovely, going out of their way to make this a beautiful day for everyone. How nice. They look past Virgo to Leo and say, what a beautiful hairstyle, goes perfectly with your outfit. Now, which treatments did I finally go for? So much choice, still not sure. Scorpio is plotting what they're going to do to the hapless receptionist when it's their turn. Under their calm exterior, Scorpio is an unexploded bomb, which if the unsuspecting spa-goers are lucky, will not detonate today. Scorpio looks around disdainfully at the superficiality going on here and is glad there is a tantric yoga class on offer, reaching a bit deeper than the froth. Ah, a Jackson Pollock on the wall, depicting our complexities. Maybe Scorpio will have a good day after all. Sagittarius is nowhere to be seen in the queue. Have you seen the program on offer today? There is just so much to be experienced, all the different approaches to health and well-being. Wouldn't want to miss any of it. If they want me to register, they'll have to find me. Didn't pay for the VIP ticket for nothing. They'd love to find out where the Thai massage therapist they're booked in with trained. Capricorn waits with a grim sense of satisfaction and validation of their sense that most people are incompetent and irresponsible. Already uneasy at being at a luxury spa, a Christmas present from a well-meaning relative, they're wondering how much they can get away from too much pampering and self-indulgence. Having put today's workload on the rest of the week's schedule, Capricorn tries to relax, reassuring themselves it's all under control and even manage to crack a joke to the eccentric behind them, who at least looks like they can think for themselves. Aquarius is really unsure about the superficial carry-on of the luxury spa. They've been spending their queue time observing it all. It's also matching the curtains, the carpets, the sofa, flowers. Freedom in mismatch is their motto. The toadying staff. How about diversity? There isn't any. Seems only the rich can afford this place, of which Aquarius isn't one. This was a gift, which they nearly donated to one less fortunate than themselves. A community spa. Now, wouldn't that be something? Pisces hasn't even noticed they're in a queue, drifting off into their own world, inspired by the beautiful surroundings and the lovely art on the walls. They're looking forward to immersing themselves fully into the experience today, especially merging into the swimming pool water. They're booked onto the art therapy class and glad they're wearing their floaty, pastel-coloured clothes. So this is quite a cliche, by no means conclusive, used here to give a flavour of the zodiac signs. We all have the 12 archetypes or signs in us, but some will be more pronounced and expressed than others, depending on your chart. Bear in mind that if you don't recognise the theme of your particular Venus, but you identify more with another sign, it may be that another planet in your chart, say the sun or moon, resonates with this sign. Maybe your Venus needs a little more exploration and acknowledgement than you have given her. So another dimension to consider is the elements illustrated here. So just because Venus is in one of those elements doesn't mean you aren't able to express the other elements. It very much depends on the rest of your chart. It's just some added information. So if you just want to take a moment to either take a picture of this slide or make some notes of the particular element your Venus finds itself in. So now onto the houses, the different spheres of life. Each one is connected to a sign and an element, as you can see. Now you will most likely have a different sign in these houses on your chart, which are due to calculations around your birth time. We will touch on that soon. Don't let it confuse you. So take a few moments to make a note of the house of Venus in your chart and the associated areas of life she will find herself best expressed in. In which area do you find self-value and self-esteem? Which sphere of life do you love? Or conversely, maybe you find it difficult to access these principles in the sphere of life your Venus suggests. Maybe this expression feels hard to connect to. If you have some planets squashing your Venus in, so to speak, known as conjunctions, or there are red lines known as hard aspects connected to it, it may make Venus's natural expression more of a challenge, as mentioned before. You'll also notice the modes on the outside of the circle. So cardinal for the initiators, new projects and ideas, but not always good at finishing them. The fixed signs for the builders and preservers, loyal and persistent but resistant to change. And mutable for the flexible ones, known for their adaptability and their openness to change. So if you've all taken a picture of this or made a note of the house that is relevant to you, I shall just move on to the next slide. Are there any questions so far?
Ariane, sorry, could I ask?
Yes.
My Venus is 1 degree Cancer. That's right. So
Yeah.
very at the start. Does that mean,
Yes.
would it have some elements of the previous sign, or would it just be very minor Cancer traits, or what? I mean,
Well,
very at the start. I
opinions,
don't know.
yeah.
I'm not
Yes, I
sure.
know.
It doesn't seem to be very
Opinions, there's quite
full.
varying opinions on that one. But most astrologers would say, no, if it's 1 degree, you are in,
Okay.
basically, you are in Cancer. However, I believe that it's very close to the previous sign. So there's probably some kind of colouring of the previous sign in there as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, that's interesting to explore for yourself, Wendy, just to see, what comes up around that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? So,
Could you just explain, sorry,
sorry, Ian. Yes.
could you just explain the symbols in the center for the elements? I think it
Yes.
was that last slide.
Okay, I shall just go back.
I'm not familiar with those.
So the symbols on the inside,
Yeah.
they're the zodiac signs. So we have Aries, Taurus.
Oh yeah, no,
Gemini.
right in the middle. Sorry. The little ones in the
Oh,
middle.
they
Water.
stand for the elements, Ian. So
Yeah,
we have
elements, sorry.
water.
Water.
We have water, fire, earth, and air.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah, got it.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
you're welcome. Any other questions? Right. So Venus in the houses. Again, if you just take a picture of that, if it's relevant to you, we shall be moving on to the higher numbers in a second. So this is by no means conclusive, but again, some added information for you. So we have the positive expressions or gifts in the left column, and the challenging expressions or the unconscious ones on the right, which could be due to conjunctions or hard aspects to your Venus. I've highlighted the fifth house as it is Venus's playground, so to speak, for everyone, regardless of whether she is in that house or not. The house of creativity, fun, and love. Make a note of signs, elements, and if there are any planets in there which would lend it more importance. Right. Can I move on? Yes. And the next houses. Any questions here, or are we okay to move on? So, just a little addendum here to the Venus puzzle. If your Venus finds itself in either sign or house, its expression is meant to be enhanced in your life. So Taurus, whose ruler is Venus, as Libra's, is one of Venus's signs par excellence, because one of the reasons being that Taurus is so good at living in the moment and really enjoying all the sensual and the sensual pleasures. And so some astrologers say it's the least spiritual signs. I would actually argue that it's probably one of the most spiritual signs, precisely because they are so able to be in the moment. So it is the Buddha nature. And then we have Libra. So again, if you have any planets in Libra or the seventh house, you again will be quite in touch with the Venusian side of seeking balance, harmony, and beauty, especially in human relationships. A lot of artists have these signs and houses emphasized in their charts, as well as the fifth house. So it isn't just the domain of the water signs being a good artist. Right, so on to the angles. Going back to the birth time calculation I mentioned previously, the angles are really quite important in the birth chart. They are the cross onto which the chart sits, so to speak. So the ascendant, timed precisely to your birth time and changing every 2 hours, which you would find here in your chart, or moving a degree every 4 minutes, determines the rest of your chart, i.e. where the houses and signs will find themselves. It represents our window onto the world, how we look at the world and meet it, and how the world sees us. Some astrologers call it the symbol of our soul's journey in this life. The descendant represents, on the other side, represents the other, used here with a capital for the archetype of the other. It does stand for the significant other or possible marriage partner, but what we seek in them and are drawn to. It also represents how we perceive and meet or interact with others generally. The saying, to see in the eyes of the beloved, the God to whom we belong, is an apt description of the meaning of the descendant. So next is the medium Cheli, which is up here. It represents your public self, ambitions or vocations. I've deliberately not included career in this, as it may or may not be the same. I will keep this explanation as simple as possible, as in some systems of astrology, the MC and the 10th house of career are one and the same. The system I use, however, the equal houses system, differentiates between vocation and career, or might give us some more information as to how one approaches purpose in life, which may not be the same as one's career, an important differentiation in my opinion. The last angle, which is opposite the MC, is the Imam Cheli, IC for short, or most hidden point in the birth chart, and it's opposite the MC. It represents our early childhood and how we experience it, and how we experience home then and how we experience it now. Our private self we do not necessarily show the world, but which obviously colors the expression of our persona. So as an example, going back to our Rock Bank Fellowship chart and looking at the ascendant, it looks like this is a meeting of humanitarian, progressive, if not eccentric thinkers, as Aquarius is on the descendant, thinking for air, who are inspired by others and meet and consider them with respect and admiration. Leo on the descendant, fire for inspiration. Looking at the MC of our meeting today, which is up here, it is vocationally or purposefully in Sagittarius, the sign associated with philosophical exploration from all walks of life. Here it is in the 11th house, which represents community and collective matters. If we look at the 10th house, it is in Scorpio, indicating that the public persona of this meeting is one unafraid to explore the depths of the human psyche. Not dissimilar principles, but offering more nuance in its interpretation. So here we have the IC, not normally marked on the chart. I'm not quite sure why, but it's on the little blue line here, exactly opposite the MC. And if it's just on the cusp between the 4th and the 5th house. And if we look at the 4th house, we have Venus in there, really, and it is in Taurus. Sorry, Venus is the ruler of Taurus, which is why it is a Venusian principle. So it looks like this group is quite at home and comfortable with concepts of the subconscious, as well as the Venusian pursuits of art and beauty. The IC in the 5th would indicate there is a playful and curious way of expressing this. And here we have our Venus in the 8th house. She's in Virgo, which would indicate that Venus is unafraid to explore the depths of the human psyche, inherited patterns, taboos, and secrets, and does so in a very particular matter with attention to detail, and is not afraid of dissecting everything. So I think that sort of sums up our meeting quite well, I would say. I'm just sharing all this information with you in case anyone has Venus conjunct one of these angles, which would lend it much more weight and much more meaning as well. So if you do have your Venus conjunct the ascendant, the MC, the IC, or the descendant, look out for that one. Mm-hmm. Any questions? Okay. Right, so I shall move on to some example charts just to hopefully just bring a few of the Venusian principles together. I hope that's clear and that I've made it as clearly as possible for you. And I have chosen Angelina Jolie, who is very obviously blessed by Venus gifts, very beautiful woman. And if we look at her chart, and here we have Venus exactly conjunct the ascendant. So that means, and it is in Cancer, but it's very close to Leo, which would mean that she's very much a symbol of the idea of collective beauty because it's in the 12th house. It's also in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, which indicates again collective and public psyche, and therefore she's seen by so many people as a symbol of beauty, and she is indeed. It's in the 12th house, which also would mean that she does like her privacy, which I believe she does, in contrast to this quite leonine public persona that she has. She has Leo in the 1st house, making her quite confident and noticeable, obviously. So if we go to her MC, here we have some more clues as to the rest of her life. Because if you think, other than acting, she has undertaken numerous field missions to conflict zones indicated by Mars up here and Aries around the world, which it's in the 9th house, which is the house of representing different creeds, different philosophies, travel. So and she's traveled there to highlight issues faced by refugees and displaced persons due to differences in creed. So here we are, quite beautifully explains that one. And also if we look at her 10th house of career, again, it's Taurus, ruled by Venus, and she's made a career in the arts involving her looks. So here is a very nice example of a chart where Venus is strongly at work, really. And also her 5th house in Sagittarius. Now, obviously, we haven't covered this, but it has Neptune in it. Again, it's a planet of beauty and illusion and the arts and the cinema. So, yeah. Any comments or any questions about this? Okay, so
Are there any things in her chart that she needs to, can you see that she needs to watch out for or adjust? Or, I mean, they're all very positive things.
yes, I picked up the positive things, Jenny.
Fragile, are there? Yes. There's no fragilities.
Yes, of course, everybody has them
Yeah.
really. So yes, you know, there are, she does have some challenges here, some red lines,
challenges.
hard aspects. Yeah, and she has been obviously she has had quite a few challenges in her life, health-wise as well.
Yeah.
Probably indicated by this 6th house in Capricorn, which is a tough one. You know, Capricorn is always, so it probably sort of indicates a few health struggles. So yeah, there's plenty we could be discussing this in depth, but I just thought I'd highlight what we're touching on today, which is Venus, and also the angles, just because I touched upon that as well. There's plenty more we could be saying about her chart, obviously. But she has, despite her challenges, really lived out that chart beautifully.
Thank you.
And probably thanks to the challenges, actually. So yeah. Right. Anyone else? Okay. So I'd like to move on to David Bowie. And I've picked him because he really is a prime example of a man expressing his anima, having both the male and the female quite well balanced in his chart. And as a person, you didn't really need his chart to be able to ascertain that. So if we look at his Venus, it's right here in Sagittarius in the 10th, which is the house of career, but it also very much borders onto the 11th and very close to the MC. So it wasn't just his career, it was his vocation. You know, he loved his vocation. It was his vocation, it was his career. And he probably also saw himself as a carrier of a message to the collective, you know, and he was, you know, he used his image to open people's minds about what a man is or what a man could be. And these very Sagittarian, Jupiterian principles, you know, very open-minded and exploring different sides of humanity. So his ascendant is an Aquarius. Again, he's pretty eccentric, really, pretty individual. And if we go on to his descendant, it's in Leo here. And I don't know if you knew if you saw pictures of his wife called Iman, and she's absolutely beautiful, very Leonine. So that's indicated by that as well. So again, interestingly, even though he was quite out there, again, there's quite a lot going on in the 12th house, which is actually a planet which does represent artists as well, because you need retreat from the world in order to be able to create. So if you have lots of planets in a 12th house, you're probably quite a creative person as well, and you do need time on your own to be able to recover and create. And then here we have Uranus in the 5th house, which shows that his artistic expression will be really quite eccentric and electrifying. If you think about it, Ziggy Stardust. So yes, again, a chart which, you know, you can see what we've been talking about today quite beautifully. Any questions or comments about it? Okay, so I shall move on to one last example chart. That of William Blake, known to many of you, of course. Here's an example of a poetic and artistic expression not being straight away identifiable through Venus only. So here we have Venus. It's in Capricorn in the 6th house, but quite close to the descendant, indicating hard work and precision to detail. But it doesn't obviously point to his imaginative and often otherworldly artistic expression. It does point to his long and mainly happy marriage to his wife, as Venus is nearly conjunct the descendant, related to the other or marriage partner, if you'll recall. So in Blake's case, we must look to other planets, other indicators. So for example, the moon in the 12th house would be a good indicator. His 5th house is quite busy. We have the sun, so his whole personal identity will be bound up in creativity, in fire, which very much explains all his prolific art. And it's in Jupiter, which could have some religious elements to it, and certainly some spiritual elements to it. And again, here, if we look at the 1st house, we have Neptune there, and his ascendant is just in Cancer, but just going into Leo as well, which will give him quite a lot of drive, creative drive. So I've tried to keep it as simple as possible because, as I pointed out to Jennifer, we could be talking away for hours, but I didn't want to confuse things and water down the whole Venus principle, which is what we're concentrating on today. Are there any more questions? Because this is the end of my presentation before we move on to imaging and your own detective work. So I do hope that after today's session, you might have discovered some new dimensions in your answers to the question, who do you see in the mirror? But before we part company, I have one last poem for you called Love After Love, and it's by Derek Walcott. Love after love, the time will come when with elation you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. So, this beautiful poem, picked for its summary of our reacquaintance with our own inner Venus, draws today's exploration of Venus in your natal chart to a conclusion. Thank you very much to everyone for your attention and your very valued participation. May I wish to each of you that Venus accompanies you throughout the ever-renewing cycles of your life. Thank you.